I am. I am a dancer, graceful as a feather. I am a leopard pouncing on my food. I can write while looking away. I can ride my bike and stand up at the same time. I do lots of writing. I dance a lot. I am a lover of the color purple. I'm a lover of leopards. I see the world in a peaceful way. I color and play the keyboard. I am a lover of snow. I do fun stuff, and I'm a lover of reading. I see the world in a colorful way. I work on things I love. I do what I want. I love my family, and that is me.
Hello, I'm Cheryl Peralt, and I'm here at HCAM Studios with 6 very special students of Hopkinton, and just delighted to be with them here today. Last winter and spring, I had the privilege and honor of teaching an after-school class at Hopkins with these students called Creative Writers Roundtable for Young People. And these classes were only for 8 weeks at a time, and there were 2 sessions. And the students who signed up were students interested in writing in some way. And they formed themselves in both a winter and spring session. And here are some of the students from who were part of both the spring and the winter sessions. This class was a new adventure for me, and I imagine as well for the students. And I was not prepared for the impressive way that these students took off with their creative writing, as well as their listening and speaking to one another in a roundtable. And what we would do would be to be seated around a table and work as a group for just an hour on the task and the art of creative writing, and listen to one another, and other types of work within a very short period of time. And I was so impressed. At the end, we had a reading at the end of our class with a sample of each student's work we had each student share some of the poems from their journals. You'll see that they decorated today with the final form of their poem, and I thought it would really be nice to have some sharing of this work out with community as well. So here we are. And so I'd like to thank all of you for being here, and I thought maybe we could get started with a little introduction of who you are as some of the students of the roundtable. If you could say your name and tell our audience here, and perhaps one other thing about you might like folks to know about you, what you like to learn about, especially in school or life, or maybe what you like to do in your spare time, what you did on your summer vacation. And this is the kind of thing that would be part of the roundtable too, talking about a little about our lives. And so how about Arlen? Would you be willing to start us off and just look out at the audience and tell folks your name and a little about yourself?
My name's Arlen.
And your last name?
Arlen Shabazz. And I like reading poetry, most about writing, so yeah.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you for being first.
I'm Cleo, and I like writing. I like creative writing more than nonfiction writing, and I like fantasy writing, like things that aren't true, or making pictures up in my head and just telling a story on a notebook or a paper or anything.
Thank you.
My name is Anjana Venkatram, and I like writing like fantasy, and because it's more like like kind of out of this world kind of writing. And it's more fun than like nonfiction writing, which is more realistic.
Thank you. Over this side.
My name is Julia Hoffmaster, and I like writing longer like stories and poems than shorter poems. I like to write about like things that I've done in my life and places and fantasy stuff too.
Thank you.
My name is Nathan Sridharan, and I like fiction writing.
Thank you.
My name is Sophie Dallin, and I like poetry and just making up stories.
Thank you. Well, how about that? I was saying, oh, talk about your summer or something, and everybody went right to task talking about writing. Very impressive. I didn't even have to ask you to go there. So I thought we could talk a little bit about the roundtable and then go reading the poems. School has started up again. We've had a summer break since I've last seen all of you. Some of you are at Hopkinton Middle School now, and some of you are in your last year at Hopkins. And I'm delighted that you could be here, and I wonder if you can remember back a little bit to how the roundtable worked and help me tell folks in the audience and on TV what were some of the specific tasks we did in that short time at Roundtable that made it what it was in being a circle together, in getting writing done pretty fast with only 8 sessions. And that was largely you, myself as facilitator saying, okay, here you go, let's write. You have 5 minutes, maybe, I'd say, or sometimes 10 if we were lucky. And there were some other parts. So can anybody remember some of the parts of the round table that would happen to get you to write? Julia, you have an idea?
Well, you would say like, okay, ready, set, write, and I would just stare at the piece of paper, and I would just, whatever comes out of my head, I just jot down on a piece of paper, and then I can make edits afterward.
Yeah, so kind of trusting the writer process you were doing rather than thinking and letting thinking or judgment get in the way. And I think that was something that you all were very good at, trusting your writer voice very quickly, because I did not give you a lot of time, right? Sometimes it would be 3 minutes even. And we did focus on writing poetry or stories because that's a shorter form of writing that we could cover in an hour. And Julia mentioned editing. Can anyone speak to how did you edit? How were you editors in there? Anyone remember? Oh, you remember, Anja?
Like we'd finish it, we move on, and then the next day when we come in, we'd check our writing and then edit it.
Yes, that's right. You had a certain amount of time when the intercom was on, and I wouldn't be able to talk with you, right? Because it was loud. So that was a time everybody knew just what to do, and there were comments in the books. And I was so impressed also how independent you all were to look at the comments, which were not criticism, but just suggestions, pushing some ideas to write a little more on. And everybody was so great at editing, which is an important part of writing as well. And then how about in being a round table? We didn't read out loud all the time to each other, but can you talk about maybe something that you learned from each other from the round table, from reading occasionally out loud? Sophie, it looks like you have something.
Well, sometimes we would like write about vacations we went on or like favorite places.
Yeah.
And then when people share them, we would like know a little bit more about them.
That's right. The process of talking with each other to kind of poke and encourage us to write further and tell our stories out loud, and then sometimes that would encourage the writing. And in fact, I remember from the first session, I was going on a trip to Miami, and someone in the class gave me the assignment to write about my trip right when I got back. And I did. I wrote a poem out of it and shared it with that class. And I think the second time, what we talked about, because often talking about life came out of this too. My husband had to go to the hospital, the emergency room, for the first time, and so that was something I got an assignment from someone. They wanted me to write about that too, which would have been interesting, but I haven't gotten to that yet. I will keep that in mind, because writing about different parts of life is really important too. And I think you'll hear a diversity of themes here for 8 short weeks, although we could have covered a lot more ground. But we can go over to the reading now. Everybody ready? Anything else you want to say about the roundtable before we go there? And maybe we'll have a little time for talking at the very end as well. But I'm so impressed how all the students here dug into writing and trusted their writer's voice. And sometimes you'll hear humor, sometimes you'll hear depth and wisdom, sometimes you'll hear a listing of observations, of being really present in that moment of writing and putting it down on the paper. So I thought we would start with the theme of weather and seasons that we talked about. We started with a lot of snow in the winter, and then we went into spring with especially the second group, where things were finally, after all those March snowstorms, spring began to show itself, and green things were growing, and we were thinking about what it's like to walk outside in the spring. So for weather, I have, let's see, I know I have Chloe talking about snow. Could you share that poem with us?
When I think of snow, I see flaky, pure white powder on the peak of a mountain. When I think of snow, I hear boots crunching in the chunky powder in the deep woods. When I think of snow, I smell sweet crumbs from crushed candy canes. When I think of snow, I taste a snow cone. Yes, I have tasted snow. When I think of snow, I touch soft, frigid, flaky, pure powder. When I think of snow, I think of dusty, white flour sprinkling down from the sky.
Thank you, Chloe. And I think then spring comes, right? And Anjana and Nithalan both wrote about that. Can you find your spring poem, Anjana?
Mm-hmm.
Is it?
It's this
Oh,
one.
there.
Spring. The best part of spring is going outside. It gives me exercise. It gives me more socializing. More flowers do grow. I'm allergic to pollen, sadly, but still, they sprout as fast as a vine, just like time. Spring gives tears in your eyes as everything goes by. And spring will come back soon.
Thank you. And Nithalan?
Spring for me is seeing buds on trees, or bunnies hopping, or birds chirping, or the snow is gone with the green grass, or the colorful flowers, or the bees pollinating, or seeing people walk their dogs, or seeing kids playing baseball or soccer, or just happy to be outside seeing the bright sun, or seeing rain fall from the sky.
Thank you. And Sophie?
Is it the If I Was a Rock one?
That must be it.
If I was a rock, I would go into puddles making great noises. I would lay in my leaf pile and say to myself, I love being a rock. He would pick me up and put me in collections, museums, and so many other exciting places. I would throw myself in the air and I would go so high it would be like touching the sun. I would love being a rock.
Thank you. So that prompt was, did I bring some stones in for you to look at and imagine exactly, if you were the rock, if you were the little river stone or whatever I brought in, and just to trust that flow of thoughts and write about it. Where has this rock been out there in the world? And what everybody had written was where imagination would go. And imagination is so important. I'd been to an adult conference on poetry with the poet Bruce Weigel, and he said, he had heard Billy Collins, and he agreed that we're losing our imagination. He said, hold on to imagination as writers, and I've been really pleased to see that in this group. All right, we have one example of talking about animals. One time we had some cuttings of all different kinds of animal pictures, and some of them were a little more whimsical or funny, and some were beautiful pictures. And Chloe, can you share the poem about what you found?
White spotted deer. I am a white spotted deer. My tail is the color of cotton. I gracefully prance around the grassy meadow full of white blooming flowers. I stop to take a little rest under a 100-year-old oak tree in the middle of the meadow. After I awaken from my nap, I go back to my sister and parents in the woods, feeling warm and bubbly inside.
Thank you. And we also talked about where we have been in the world, whether it's in our own town, in our home, or on the other side of the world. And I had asked two of the writers if they would share poems about or stories about places in the world they had been. And so we have Arhan and Julia for that. Would you like to start, Julia?
Sure.
Yours was inspired by a vacation?
Rothenburg. As I walk down the cobblestone streets of Rothenburg, I'm taking in the smell of fresh flowers and warm bread. I see the hotel that I deeply slumbered in and the marvelous bakery with pastries fresh from the oven. As my family and I walk on that cobblestone street, I take a look around and see all the dresses in the windows, the baker pulling treats from the oven, and all the people whose hearts are as warm as the pastries. I walk down to the center of Rothenburg, where my family and I take a tour to learn all about the history of this quaint little town has made. Later, my father, sister, and I journey up the steps to the walking area, about to walk the wall of Rothenburg. Sometimes late at night at walk, sometimes in the day. The wall is very mysterious. You never know when you will get to a tall staircase or a small room. My father and I walk down the towering wall. Our stomachs are moaning and groaning for a hearty meal. My family and I walk down to our hotel, where we enter the lively restaurant for a nice dinner of schnitzel, which is breaded pork, and salmon with potatoes. Everything has lots of flavor. I trudge up the long stairway to my bed, my body desperately needing to lie down. In the warm, fluffy flannel blankets, I make it up to the stairway. I slip on my nightgown and collapse in my warm bed.
Collapse in your warm bed, and that I felt like I want to go to Rothenburg and have some of that bread and go for a walk, from the attention to details, which are very important in the writing. And Arhan, you will take us to India now.
Welcome to India. Early in the morning, you will see hundreds of animals crossing the street. Late at night, you will see many of our mango trees. In the morning, you will hear a ton of trotting, some from deer. In the night, you may hear some pots clicking, making kheer. In the morning, you will smell the fresh, stiff air or smelling school bells. In the night, you may taste the minty smell from your toothpaste. This is what it's like in India. Hope next time I go, I'll see you.
Next time I go, I'll see you. And likewise, the details in there, the attention to the smells and the tastes, certainly make me want to travel there as well. And you see that Arhan chose on his own to put rhyme in his poem as well, which the way that the students created their poems or their stories was up to them, and I would just give some writing to make suggestions how to break it up on the page and that type of thing, typically. Right, so from places in the world to space. We talked about space and stars, and have you ever been outside looking at the stars and what that was like, and then thinking about outer space from there. And I just loved the poems and asked for a sample of a few for this topic as well. So, Nithalin, could you share your space poem, please? Space is some area of interest for you. Is that right, or is that changed, or
A little bit.
a little bit changed? You know, because it was summer. Yeah.
My poem is, when I think about space, I think of space as like the ocean. Deep, dark, and dangerous, with mysterious creatures and mostly unexplored. I also feel that space is really out of this world.
So, you know, that's a very important thing for poetry also, that last line to end with, for people to hold on to. And there's a little bit of a play on words there. I don't know if it just came out of you or you were thinking about it. I also think that space is out of this world, which was an interesting way to end. Were you a little, were you having fun with that, or were you serious? Having a little fun, because I know that's part of who you are too as a writer. Thank you. And Julia, you also had written about space.
Space. To me, space is the ever-expanding universe. Aliens, people, planets, robots, spaceships, all of it. The stars gleam and glimmer like sequins on a pretty dress. The moon shines proudly as if he's in a picture. The stars, all in different constellations, make a pretty picture of the Big Dipper and Orion with his bow and arrow in my mind. I gaze up to the stars thinking, what could be on all those planets? The people, the aliens, the spaceships, the planets. No trees, no tall grass, nothing in our way of seeing the galaxy. I think space is the science of science, the ruler of the world we know, and the life of what we know and everything I like.
Thank you. And we have Anjana on space.
Space. When I look at the stars, how galactic they seem, held all its love and its gleam. And as I look, I get a tingle within. I feel like I'm in there, spinning with them. Spinning with all my planets known, as love is spinning around me. And I realize that's all I need.
And I realize that's all I need. Thinking about space, to planets, to spinning, to love, and that's all that I need, coming back down to earth as a writer. Okay, thank you. So you see how imagination and writing are at work here, all on their own as student writers. And now one of the prompts was to write a little tell about oneself. And I asked Chloe and Arlen to share their poems, either I Am, which was kind of a self-summary, and there might have been another topic too. Chloe, can you share yours?
Sure.
What was the title of yours?
From the lens of being me.
That's it, yes. We talked about that, from the lens of being me, so how you look out on the world, right?
From the lens of being me. When I wake up at 6:30 in the morning, I see my purple blanket at the end of my bed. I see my fuzzy carpet and my yellow lamp, and my red, fluffy ladybug pillow, and my purple walls. When I get out of bed, I groggily exit my room, feeling sleepy and unhappy. I go to the white bathroom where I wash my face and become more awake, and I see things more clearly and brightly then.
Thank you. That's something we all hope to do in the morning, get to that point of clarity and seeing things more brightly and clearly. And Arlen, was yours the lens of being me or I am?
Mine's I celebrate myself.
I celebrate myself. We were talking about Walt Whitman a bit and a part of his poem with that title. So this is Arlen's version.
I celebrate myself. I celebrate myself as a mathematician, as a reader, and a writer, and gum blower,
and a snowman builder, a scientist who knows a lot of facts, a humorous person. I know I can laugh. I know I am awesome. What a poet I am.
Thank you. And, one of the things I also do, I interview people in Hopkinton for Meet Your Neighbor. I've done life review writing for people from childhood to end of life in hospice. And I greatly value the ongoing process of life review, celebrating ourselves, looking at ourselves honestly and humbly, but talking about how we see our life as a whole, as a circle. And I always love to hear what students have to say about that and see them doing this process. And hopefully integrating it, keeping with us at life, and not just waiting till later on, like Jane Fonda's writing her memoirs now, which I think it takes 5 CDs or 5 hours on film I just saw on TV. Maybe she waited a long time to put it all together. So keep writing your own stories as you go and you grow along too. So the last part of this reading is working on problem solving. Sometimes I'd have a prompt and I would forget about it that day because something interesting would happen, and I would give the writers not only the task of writing, but help me solve this problem here. This is what I dealt with today. And these responses were creative, imaginative, funny. And the first one was that I came in one day in spring and told the students that I had this problem of a neighbor that I'm very close with who has 2 cats who go outside in the wild, and they happen to like my house to come by because I have a lot of birds who unwisely build their nests on lower branches, and I had some babies right by the house, baby robins I'd been watching, and being very careful that the birds and the cats would not meet. And I had conversation with my neighbor who cared about this issue too. We talked about putting a bell on the cat. But I ran it by the students. What would you do if you were to write a letter to the cat, if the cat could read the letter, if you could help that cat solve the problem so that they would not bother the baby robins in my yard? It was total imagination, and it was fun. And I have 2 responses from Arhan. Can you read yours?
Bird, dear neighborhood cat, please stay away from the birds because if you kill them, it will be gross and no one likes dead birds, except maybe for you. I hope you leave the birds alone. I really do. Because if you try and kill them, nobody will like you. The new mess will smell bad. The mess will be sad. So whatever you do, make sure you don't do it. I will be watching you too.
So there's some humor and some little bit of graphic detail in there with the senses, so thank you. And Julia, you also had a suggestion for a solution.
Dear neighborhood cat, your neighbor has a pretty robin's nest with young babies in it. She would like to save the babies and prevent them from getting eaten. Please don't go attacking the robins. Maybe we could get you fish by the yard so you can eat the fish instead of the robins. Possibly we can talk with your owner and get a set limit of how many houses to attack. Just please don't attack the nest. Anything would work, anything you want. Velvet cushions, tins of caviar. Just please don't attack the nest.
So that very creative idea. Tins of caviar for the lucky cats or cushions. So I appreciated your sense of humor and imagination on that as well. And different angles at trying to solve that problem, right? And all of them were just delightful to read. And the last issue that we're going to talk about that brought to a topic for writing was the title I offered, I Am in Awe of the Earth. Because one day, on my way into, it was the same day I was over at the Roundtable to talk with the students, and I was behind a car on a back road, and there were some people who tossed a very large Dunkin' Donuts styrofoam cup just out the window in this beautiful country road. And, there it was, this very big piece of litter in the middle of the road, and I felt so badly that there was no thought of oh, this is litter on the earth. Who's going to pick that up? It's going to pollute our earth more. And I talked to the students how the feelings that I had, and my imagination, how I was imagining dealing with that situation. And I asked everybody, well, if you were to write a poem with that topic, that title, I am in awe of the earth, to be as convincing as you can to maybe folks who were littering, if they read this poem, could you write it to try to convince them that they would think, oh, I will never do that again. I see your point. I do not want to pollute this earth anymore because of its beauty. And I have 2 samples as the last of our reading to share with you. Nithlin, you have one of those?
I am in awe of the earth because it is fun to jump in mud puddles or play in the grass, or to see tall green trees and the mighty mountains standing tall looking upon the earth, or to see the blue sky with fluffy clouds, or to make shapes with the clouds in the vast space.
In the vast space, yes. And you can hear all the details of beauty and specific interest to Nithlin there too. And sometimes we would make lists ahead of time. What do you think is beautiful about the earth, or specific details about a place you've been, just to help jog the writer's voice in you to come out. And so that's why you might get these different kinds of perspectives. And Sophie, you also have a poem, I Am in Awe of the Earth. I don't know if that was your title or you went with another one, but you'll be ending us at this point with our poetry readings. So if you can face our audience and share nice and loud. We'll go out there today. It's Poly Arts Day and it's Family Day, and we'll look at the earth around us and be inspired by all of these words. And if you could send us out with this one.
I am in awe of the earth, the space that has the glistening stars, the sky that protects us, the mountains that we hike, the hills that people climb, the trees that give us oxygen, the tall plants, the flowers that grow beautifully, the grass that glistens in the morning, the buds that will sprout into plants, the soil that makes mud pies.
That makes mud pies. And that's kind of a fun, creative way to go. And no small comment either. Mud pies as a child, but artists who take the mud of the earth, make it into clay, make beauty of it, all the different ways we have to celebrate, just like all of your poems. We have celebrated a lot. We talked a lot about nature's beauty, and we talked about us as human beings, and we talked about space way out there. All kinds of topics, and it's been my pleasure and privilege to have you as part of the Creative Writers Roundtable for Young People this past year, and I wish you the best this year as you go onward to school, and I hope you keep your notebooks close to you and maybe fill them in with some more creative writing, because I think that you are all wonderful, special writers who are trusting your writer voice and not listening to the judgment or the criticism that gets in the way, and you know how to take off in just a few minutes and write. And I respect and admire all your writing, and for being here and speaking your poems and sharing today at this wonderful roundtable at HCAM TV. So thank you, HCAM TV, and thank you, audience, and thank you, one and all students here today too. Let's give a hand for ourselves. Great job, everyone.